cycles.
What cycles?
Well, so what's coming up next is you'll start seeing the cycles for requests coming out of, all of our friends over at DoD, the Air Force, Space Force will have some new ones. And so all those requests will be targeting, the space economy, the fifth industrial revolution, technological geniuses and entrepreneurs out there. But it is still summer. So in case you can't tell, this is tanned. I know it looks like I'm just sunburned, but this is what it looks like.
Oh man, George is paying attention. He realized I hit record. It ruined.
I did.
I'm no longer interested in what you're saying.
Well, because I looked over and I was like, haha, you have to give me the red light.
I'm going to turn this button off. Anyway, welcome to the Space Economy, your destination for the business space. George is going to tell you some really important things, probably about government contracting. His Space Force's budget is $15.2 billion this year. Next year, it was slated for 17.4. NASA's budget's around 22 billion. They asked for a couple of % increase. So George is going to talk about some contracting opportunities, probably.
Yes, those opportunities, and they're coming. But that's maybe not the most interesting thing. What you just made me think about is something that, because obviously we both come from blockchain, crypto backgrounds. And so, if you already know that, we have a book. It's about both the space economy and blockchain. It's a thing. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anyway, that wasn't a plug. The point was that when will we see the flippening between the Space Force budget and the NASA budget? That's interesting.
When you say the flippening, do you mean Space Force budget will be larger than NASA's budget?
Yes. So there's always talk
money on defense or DoD stuff. That sounds crazy.
Never. So the talk of the flippening in crypto has happened for a long time, right? Like when will Bitcoin be dethroned, right? And this is not a solicitation for me to hear from Bitcoin maximalists. I'm good. I've had the Kool-Aid. But what I'm
Twitter account at Pullen for Maine trolling.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But seriously, what does the flippening mean within the space economy? What does it mean when Space Force's budget becomes bigger than NASA's? That's something that deserves some more thought.
I like where your head is at, because really it's the maturation of Space Force, because Space Force is barely two.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, now that Space Force is a toddler, what is it going to look at like by the time it's old enough to go to kindergarten?
And the pathway ahead, right? So if we think about $450 billion space economy today, on the pathway to 4 trillion, some estimates have it at 10 trillion, right? Within our lifetimes. If you think about that, what that means, that's a 20x plus increase in the size of an economy that has to have maintenance of, observation, additional data, additional freedom of movement exercises, likely personnel. Some of those personnel might be advanced robotics, but that's all going to take money. And so as the size of the space economy increases at this rate, it's probably reasonable to expect that the size of Space Force will need to increase at a similar rate.
I'm going to put an asterisk, a star, thingamajiggy here, because I know George hates when we talk about space tourism. So instead of talking specifically about space tourism, Tona put up a big graphic of Sir Richard Branson up here, just over George's head. Part of it is, it's not just the Space Force and NASA, the federal government. It's just not the government. It's also the commercialization of space, because in order to get from about $450 billion to 4 trillion or 10 trillion, there's a private industry play in there. Because there will always be the nation. Oh, I had a great tweet. You can't be a space power if you're not a world power or global power. Something like that. You said something similar last week. I slightly tweaked it. Whenever I steal something from George, I improve it. But part of that is, there's not only going to be China and India who are in the space economy, who are doing things in space, but it's also the private industry that will rise up to complement and help grow out and fully mature the space economy. So we gotta think about that a little bit more, George.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shifting economic forces there, right? because you have the increased spend likely coming from Space Force, as you said, as it matures. You have the likely future state of the flippening, where Space Force's budget will be greater than NASA's. You also likely have a future state where you have more spending in aggregate from other nations than you do from the US in space operations, broadly speaking. So I'm combining multiple budgets when I say space operations. And so each one of those three economic milestones will relate back to commercial opportunities and will relate back to changes in relationships, changes in, financial structures and modes of interaction here on Earth.
I love it. I love it. George said something brilliant last week. I tweeted it out on the space economy Twitter handle, and then I cleaned it up this morning. And we're going to end on this point, and I'm going to read it out loud. If you're not a space power, you can't be a global power. That's just it. If you're not a space power, you can't be a global power. So while we're looking at the flippening from the Space Force and NASA budget, we're also looking at other countries who want to be global powers, but in order to be a global power, got to be a space power. And then how does commercialization of space lead into the growing space economy? So that's it for the moment. This actually turned out to be far more informative than I had planned or had ever hoped for. So I'll try to ambush George with the record button on another occasion. But till then, stay awesome. See you next orbit. Peace.